Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a story that is as shocking as it is revealing about the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. What unfolded recently demonstrates not only the resilience of Ukrainian forces, but also the strategic patience that has become a defining feature of this war. Ukraine waited, calculated, and watched as Russian forces dug themselves into positions they thought were safe. But safety was an illusion, and when the moment came, the nightmare began for Russia. From the very beginning of this war, Russia attempted to overwhelm Ukraine with speed and size. They wanted to crush Ukrainian defenses quickly, but what they underestimated was Ukraine's ability to learn, adapt, and wait for opportunities that would multiply the impact of their limited resources. In this latest operation, Ukraine turned patience into a weapon. Instead of rushing into Russian strongholds, they allowed Russian troops to entrench, believing that they were secure. The longer Russia stayed in these fortified areas, the more they became predictable targets. Ukraine's intelligence networks have been quietly improving since the start of the war. They rely not only on NATO and Western partners for satellite images and intercepted communications, but also on their own local networks embedded near occupied zones. These networks helped Ukraine identify where Russian soldiers were hiding, resting, and concentrating their forces. Russia thought trenches, bunkers, and underground shelters would protect them, but in reality, these became traps. When the assault began, Ukrainian forces did not move recklessly. They targeted these strongholds with precision strikes, artillery, and drone attacks. Russia's so-called safe zones suddenly turned into cages of destruction. Soldiers who believed they were beyond reach were struck with a fury they were not prepared for. The element of surprise created chaos, and that chaos spread like wildfire across Russian units. For Ukraine, this wasn't just about one battle. It was about sending a message that nowhere is truly safe for occupying forces. Every time Russian soldiers try to dig in and hide, Ukraine shows that it has the capability to find them, to wait for the right moment, and to strike with devastating results. The nightmare for Russia is not just about losses on the battlefield, but also the psychological toll. Soldiers who no longer trust their shelters are soldiers who live in constant fear. The use of drones has been critical in this operation. Ukrainian drone operators, many of them young volunteers who learned quickly under fire, now play an outsized role in the war effort. These drones hover quietly over Russian positions, gathering information and guiding artillery with pinpoint accuracy. Sometimes they strike directly with explosives. For Russians hiding underground, hearing the buzz of drones above is like waiting for a sentence to be carried out. They never know when the attack will fall. Another key factor is Ukraine's ability to coordinate attacks across different regions. Instead of focusing all resources on one area, Ukraine has mastered the art of stretching Russian forces thin. They strike in one region, drawing reinforcements, then hit another where the defenses are weaker. By waiting for Russians to cluster together, believing they are safe in numbers, Ukraine magnifies the damage with concentrated strikes. This approach has been seen in places like Kherson, Bakhmut, and Zaporizhia. The morale effect on Ukrainian troops is the opposite of what Russia experiences. Each successful strike builds confidence, showing them that patience pays off. The knowledge that their enemy can be found and destroyed, even in hiding, strengthens their will to fight. For the Ukrainian population watching these events, it reinforces the belief that their army is not only defending but outsmarting a larger and better equipped adversary. Russia, on the other hand, faces mounting frustration. Their soldiers are increasingly reluctant to hold positions for long, knowing that fortifications can turn into graves. Commanders issue orders to dig in, but the fear of being discovered makes these orders hard to enforce. In some cases, Russian soldiers abandon their posts rather than risk being annihilated. This contributes to discipline problems, desertions, and a breakdown in trust between ranks. The Russian strategy of overwhelming firepower has not yielded the results they hoped for. Artillery bombardments can flatten towns, but they cannot destroy the intelligence and patience Ukraine relies on. Instead, Russia often ends up exhausting ammunition on empty spaces, while Ukraine conserves strength and waits for the right time to strike. This war of timing favors the defender who knows the terrain and has local support. Western weapons have also played an undeniable role. Precision artillery systems like HIMARS, supplied by the United States, allow Ukraine to strike Russian positions from far away with incredible accuracy. Combined with intelligence from drones and satellites, these weapons make hiding pointless. Russia may dig tunnels or bunkers, but once coordinates are identified, destruction is inevitable. Even when Russians rotate troops or change patterns, Ukrainian patience ensures they adapt before striking again. In recent operations, Ukraine demonstrated that it can combine night attacks, electronic warfare, and psychological tactics to keep Russians constantly on edge. Striking at night while Russian soldiers are resting creates maximum panic. Using jammers and interference makes Russian communication unreliable. And dropping leaflets or broadcasting messages reminds Russian troops that they are being watched and cannot hide forever. Each of these measures chips away at morale. The broader geopolitical message is equally powerful. By showing the world that it can resist and even push back against Russia, Ukraine strengthens its case for continued international support. Western governments see proof that their aid is not wasted. Every successful strike against entrenched Russian positions shows that modern equipment in the hands of determined fighters can change the course of war. This increases pressure on NATO allies to continue supplying arms and training. Meanwhile, Russia's leadership struggles to spin these setbacks into propaganda victories. State media portrays their soldiers as strong and advancing, but the reality from the battlefield contradicts these claims. Videos from drones and survivors reveal the scale of losses and the futility of hiding. Russian families back home grow increasingly skeptical when their sons do not return, and this undermines confidence in the government's narrative. What makes this story truly remarkable is how patience becomes more than just a tactic. It becomes a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. Unlike Russia, which tries to overwhelm with brute force, Ukraine embodies strategy, waiting for the perfect moment when the enemy's arrogance or fatigue exposes them. By doing so, Ukraine proves that wars are not always won by the side with more tanks or soldiers, but often by the side that knows when and how to strike. Every new development shows that this nightmare for Russia is far from over. As long as Ukraine continues to refine its intelligence, master its drone operations, and strike with precision, hiding will no longer be a safe option for Russian forces. Shelters, bunkers, and trenches will remain symbols of false security. The fear of sudden strikes will haunt Russian soldiers long after they leave the battlefield. This war has already shown the world countless examples of courage, sacrifice, and adaptation. What we see in Ukraine's latest move is another chapter in that story. A smaller nation refusing to be crushed, waiting patiently for its moment, and then unleashing consequences that turn the tide of battles. For Russia, the nightmare is not just in the explosions, but in the realization that their enemy is always watching, always waiting, and always ready to strike. The lesson here goes beyond Ukraine and Russia. It speaks to the timeless truth of warfare. The one who controls time and patience often controls the outcome. Ukraine's decision to wait until the Russians felt hidden and safe only to strike at that exact moment shows mastery of this principle. It turns Russia's confidence into vulnerability, and it turns hiding places into killing grounds. For the world watching, the war continues to be a reminder of how modern technology, resilience, and strategy can reshape the balance of power. Ukraine has shown that it is not just surviving. It is teaching lessons in warfare that will be studied for years to come. And as the nightmare continues for Russia, the determination of Ukraine becomes clearer than ever.